Hey, it's Denise, and I just wanted to say welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome. I have two things I wanted to just give a quick little, I guess it's more like an unboxing because I haven't used them yet, so I can't really give a review, but they're things that I was excited to get. So I opened them up, got rid of the excess packaging and stuff just so I had a clear space to show them to you. One is a electric pressure canner. So I recently had followed now here some people are going to be like, tisk, tisk, tisk. Yes, it was a Rebel canning recipe, but it was for canning parboiled rice. It was from an experienced canner, and again, when you do Rebel canning, obviously we all know you do it at your own risk. It's not something that is approved, but like with some other projects, I got mushy results, which tells me that like my food was overcooked. And I think a large part of it is because my electric stove, honestly, it stinks. It takes forever to get a pot of water boiling. So a large pot of water, like a large either water bath canner or pressure canner, it can take over a half hour to get it up to a boil, and then waiting for it to vent, and then waiting again a long time for it to get up to pressure. And then finally, I think my stuff is already probably mush before I even start processing it. So I wanted to see if getting an electric canner would give me better results because presumably it will come up to heat much faster than my pathetic old electric stove. Now, if I owned where I live, I would buy a gas stove. There was a gas stove here when I moved in, but my landlord inexplicably, rumor has it it's because his daughter wanted my gas stove, he just took it out one day and put in an electric stove, and it has never worked particularly well. It doesn't get very hot, and as someone who likes to can, you can imagine how frustrating that is. So when I had the opportunity to purchase a pressure canner, which also doubles as a pressure cooker. Now, I have a pressure cooker and I also have an Instant Pot, so did I really need an additional pressure cooker? Not really. I would have wished it was a larger pressure canner, but this is definitely going to be for small batches. It's the Nesco brand. This was the I checked out two brands that people seemed happy with, and at the moment I can't think of the name of the other brand. It was Nesco and there was one other. But this is what they had available on Amazon. It was the only electric pressure canner that they did still have in stock, so I grabbed one. Now this is going to be for small batches. This is only going to do a few jars at a time, but I'd rather do smaller batches and have them come out better. So I do want to give this a try soon and see how it works out. Like I said, I'm hopeful that it will heat up a lot faster than using my stove to try to heat a large canner, and hopefully then my food won't be overcooked. Besides that, the other kind of exciting news, as we know there's this shortage of canning supplies, and I got brave and went ahead and ordered some Harvest Guard reusable lids. Now, I have never used reusable lids. I've always just used the ball canning lids, or I'm trying to think of the name of the other brand of canning jars I have. They're not ball. They're the cheaper brand that I had gotten them at Dollar General one year. I got a whole bunch of them. They worked fine, but they were still like your standard single use as far as, metal lid. So this is my first time purchasing, and I was really happy with Harvest Guard. When I placed my order, about 2 or 3 days after I placed the order, they emailed me saying that there was going to be a delay, just that, in the manufacturing process or getting the raw materials, whatever, there was going to be a delay in filling my order, and that it might be too late for this canning season. So they offered me 100% refund if that's what I wanted, no questions asked. Or, of course, if I wanted to wait, they would send my order, but they wanted to give me the opportunity that if I wanted to cancel the order because it was going to be too late, if I was canning, say, my own harvest coming in from my garden, which this would have been too late for my garden. We've already had several nights that it's frozen, so I would have had to have picked things before now, and these just arrived today. So I appreciate that they were forthcoming and that they did offer the option of canceling my order and getting 100% refund, no questions asked, because there was going to be a delay. Now, I opted not to cancel, obviously, because I wanted to get them. And I can year-round. I have a ButcherBox subscription, and I like to can as much of the meat as I can so that it's not all dependent upon the freezer, so that if the power goes out, I don't lose all of that meat. And I also like to have it ready to serve. If I can the pork chops or the stew meat in tomato sauce, my son will heat that up and just eat it as a meal. He'll just eat a dish of pork chop chunks or beef stew chunks that were pressure canned in tomato sauce, which I figure kind of evens out for the meals when he just makes himself something like mashed potatoes. So, I'd rather he eat a high protein meal that I canned and I know exactly what's in it. And therefore it's like fast food. It's on the shelf and it's ready for him to just heat it up and eat it. So that's something I do year round, and so to me it made no sense to cancel the order just because I was going to have to wait a couple weeks. So let me show you what I got. And while I'm showing you, I'm going to talk a little bit. Now initially I went for the starter pack. Now the bottom of the plastic bag that the starter pack came in ripped open, so I just kind of neatly stacked it here. It's 15 of the wide mouth lids. You can see these are the reusable plastic lids, and 15 of the wide mouth rubber gaskets that you fit onto your lids, and you can kind of see how that takes the place of the red gummy stuff that provides the seal on a regular metal canning lid. Only, of course, this is reusable. Now, the gaskets don't last like practically forever the way that the plastic lids do. So the gaskets, now that I've heard people say anywhere from 6 to a dozen uses out of a gasket. So they certainly, you get quite a few uses out of them, but you do eventually replace the gaskets. So I got the starter kit, which was 15 of the wide mouth and then 15 of each of the regular mouth. Now I do a lot more, my preferred is to do things in wide mouth pints most of the time, especially like if I'm talking like the meats and stuff that I was just saying. I don't tend to eat a lot of meat, I don't digest it easily, so most of the time if I'm doing that, it's going to be like a pork chop, like if you buy from ButcherBox, they have like these large 8-ounce pork chops. So like one of those in a pint jar with, cut up in cubes with tomato sauce. That makes perfect meal. My son will eat that for dinner. So I tend to go through just reusing my pint jars, my wide mouth pint jars. Now, could you use that in a regular pint jar? Absolutely. It's just a little easier to get the chunks of meat out of a wide mouth jar, but you absolutely could use regular mouth jars. I wish I could get my hands on more wide mouth jars, but I know I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody wishes they could get their hands on more jars right now, and it's just pretty much impossible at the moment. So what else did I order? When I ordered these, I thought, that's nice, but it's really not very much, is it? Please excuse, I know I am in my PJs and it is late, and last night I did not sleep. I'm really not sure why. Couldn't fall asleep, finally fell asleep around midnight, and then woke up at 2 and could not get back to sleep. So today I've just kind of been dragging, and for the last 3 days I've struggled to get any video posted to YouTube. A half hour of waiting for it to upload, and like it'll get to 40 something percent, maybe 50 something percent, and then I'll just get the oops, there's been an error, and completely wiped out, have to start over. I've spent over 2 hours trying to get a single video to upload with no success. I find it very frustrating because I put a lot of work into trying to put a video up almost every day. I appreciate that you guys watch the videos, and I want you to know that, so I do try to put a video up every day or close to every day. So these last few days, I'm not sure what's wrong, and it's extremely frustrating. I also have been shooting some videos from my iPhone, which just gave a much nicer perspective. I was able to give you a better view instead of you having to see my bedroom, which is not the most scenic area. Now, granted, hopefully you're looking at the stuff I'm showing you more than, the boringness of my bedroom, which, hey, it's my boring bedroom. But it was just flat out not taking things from my iPhone, which I don't understand. For the last couple of years, I have, whenever I do a video that doesn't take place here, like when I'm showing you my gardening, or, like my arrow gardens, or my plants outside, those videos are always done on my iPhone, and I never had trouble uploading them. So I'm really not sure what the problem is in terms of getting my videos uploaded to YouTube. So please bear with me while I am having some difficulty. I'm doing my best to get my videos up there. I don't want you thinking that I'm not making videos and not trying to post them in a timely manner. Having said that, so my first thing that I threw in my basket on their website was this starter kit. And then when I was like, you know what, Denise, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you're going to really use these, then 15 of each is kind of a joke. It's really not that many, especially when you consider that you could use 15 in one canning project. I mean, I know my larger canner holds 16 pints, so that wouldn't even, if I was using all of these jars for that particular, project, if I wanted to use all the reusable jar lids, I wouldn't even have enough. So I went ahead and I got, they're right in front of me and I couldn't find them. I got an additional 50 wide mouth lids. And again, you might say, do you really need 50? Maybe, maybe not. But I felt like they had them, they're available. Lisa on Sutton's Days did a really good breakdown of the cost per use, comparing the cost of these type of rings, including the cost of these, compared to a metal ring. And yes, there's the initial investment in these, but the fact that you get to use them over and over more than makes up for the fact that they are more expensive to initially purchase. They do not come with the metal bands. They're sort of, I guess, counting on the fact that as a canner you already have your metal bands, and you just use your standard bands that you would use on either your regular or wide mouth jars that you already, I know I've got like hundreds of them everywhere. I've got them in plastic Ziploc bags. I've got them hanging on bungee cords in my kitchen, like strung up, just hanging there. So yeah, I got 50 extra wide mouth lids. And then as far as, like I said, the gaskets, the rubber gaskets, yes, you get multiple uses out of, but they don't last forever. So the regular mouth ones, I got 100 extra gaskets. There's 50 in a package. And then being that I bought 50 more of the wide mouth, I went ahead and got 150 gaskets. I figure just on the off chance that these started to become hard to get, I wanted to at least know that I had enough to get through a good period of time before I would have to worry about needing to replace these. Part of me is saying I probably should see if I can reorder maybe another pack of regular lids. Although at this point, honestly, I still have a few cases of, now they're not pints, they're quarts, but they're regular mouth jars. But I have about 5 dozen of them that I haven't even opened yet. So if I had to, I could open it to use those. You know, they're just the single-use lids that come with the jars. If I had to, I could open those to use the lids to do a canning project. But probably once I get the hang of these, and from videos I've watched, including the video put out by Harvest Guard, there is a learning curve, and they acknowledge that. For example, they said that when you know, I wish I had a jar. You'd think I'm talking about canning, I would have a jar in front of me. So, okay, I don't have a jar in front of me. Just say you're getting ready to, you know, you have your gasket on here. You've got your stuff, you know, whatever you're canning in your jar. You've wiped off your top of the rim of your jar with vinegar. They do suggest these. Now, unlike the metal lids, which some of us just have sitting in hot water, not necessarily boiling water, these they suggest that you do have simmering in boiling water immediately prior to use. So that's something that's a little different. We've gotten away from that with the metal rings. We just tend to have them in hot water just to have that red part a little bit softer and more pliable. But they do want you boiling these, like having them at a simmer as you're getting ready to use them. So that's just something that's a little bit different. They then said, you know, when you go to put them on your lid, on your jar, I'm eyeing my drink, but I know that the top doesn't come off. Okay, work with me here. Have an imagination. Hope I'm not going to drop things. I dropped my things. We're going to pretend this is my canning jar, and we're going to ignore that top. It's really my sugar-free chocolate chips. Okay, so imagine this is my canning jar. I've just filled it with tomato sauce or whatever I'm canning. So you have your gasket on your lid. You've just wiped your rim with vinegar to make and double check that your jar has no cracks. Some of this I know is repetitive if you're not a newbie, but I always appreciated when I was a newbie when people would mention things that, you know, when you're wiping off your lid with vinegar, some people just use water, but I think especially if you're canning something greasy or sticky, vinegar is just a better way to go because it's going to help clean that off and give you the best chance of getting a good seal. Vinegar also kills bacteria, so why not? A little paper towel dabbed in white vinegar, wipe along the rims of your jars, you know, after you've debubbled. It drives me crazy when I see people wipe their jars, then they debubble, potentially dripping stuff on the jars, or they wipe the jars with vinegar and then they run their fingers over it, and of course the natural oils from your fingers are now getting on the jar. So don't do those things. The last thing that touches the rim of your jar is your paper towel that you dipped in just plain old white vinegar. So again, we're pretending this is my canning jar. I probably put it where you can see it. You know, you wipe around the rim. You're now going to take this and we're going to pretend for the sake of this video that this is, you know, that it fits. You place it on top, so we're going to pretend that's fitting. Now this is something that's a little bit different. We're used to finger tight being, you know, that you kind of spin the ring just until it stops and then you turn it a little bit more. Sort of that fingertip tight that we're all used to. These you leave looser. They show you basically just have one finger holding it centered so it stays in place, while the other hand is, I'm holding this up so you can see what I'm doing. If I put it here, you know what, if I tip the camera down a little bit, you can see. So you would have one finger kind of just holding it centered, while your other hand was turning the ring. Pretty much as soon as you meet resistance, like teeniest bit. Not that like good little shh that we usually give to make it fingertip tight. The teeniest bit of resistance. Definitely less tight than the fingertip tight we are used to with regular metal lids. And the reason for that is that if these aren't able to vent out the steam while they're processing, and if you have the band too tight, they're not going to vent out the steam. According to the videos, this top is going to start to bow or bulge upward, which basically tells you you have failure. And it also means that potentially you could get hurt because it could pop off. So you don't want to put those bands on tight. Now, here's another thing that's a little different. After you finish your processing time, you do your usual thing. You use your jar lifters, you take them out, you put them on a counter. You wait 5 to 10 minutes. Then, you look at your jars, and again, these lids should look, now they're not going to ping. They don't ping. They're not going to make that gratifying sound that we all love, which I know, like, just mentally that makes me nervous because I like to hear the ping. So you're looking at them. They should not be bulging upward. As long as they're not bulging upward, now is when you're going to, obviously the jar is still hot, so you're going to use like a kitchen towel or whatever, some sort of protection for your hands. I usually just grab a kitchen towel, and that's when you're going to tighten your metal ring. And then they suggest you throw a towel over it. I think the idea is they want them to cool down a little bit slower. They don't want them to come down to room temperature too quickly. Once they've come down to room temperature, then you take your rings off and you check for your seal. Now, like with any canning lid, you should be able to lift it up by the lid. If when you go to lift up your lid, it just comes off, then obviously you don't have a seal. And either you need to reprocess it, or you need to accept, like if maybe just one jar didn't seal, you're going to say, that one's going in the refrigerator and we're eating that within the next 24 hours. But there's definitely a learning curve. Anyone whose video I've watched has acknowledged that. Like I said, the company themselves acknowledges that there's a learning curve. In fact, they said it's almost easier for people who've never used the other kind because they don't already have the habits that we have from using the metal lids, that they have to unlearn because these are a little bit different. So they're just learning how to use these, whereas we're kind of having to unlearn some of the habits that we have from using the metal lids. So keep that in mind. It's a slightly different process. Now, one thing it does have in common is that you store them, you take the rings off before you store them. And just like anything else that you've canned and put in your pantry, periodically you want to check the seals, make sure they're good, just so you would catch any seal that failed. And it seems like the way to go is a trial run or two of just canning yourself some boiled, some water. Just can some jars of water. After all, they're reusable, so it's not like you're throwing it out after using it. And that way you're not wasting food. So I plan on doing 1 or 2 rounds of just canning some jars of water to make sure I've gotten the hang of how to use these before I process food with them. Just a suggestion, if you want to jump right in it and process food, that's certainly your choice. But to me, just in case I mess up and I either put them too tight or not tight enough or whatever, I don't want to lose food. I would rather make my mistakes, get through that learning curve by just trying it, canning some water. seeing if I'm doing it right, making sure I get a good seal. Once I'm comfortable that I'm doing that right, hopefully just 1 or 2, batches of canning water, then I'll feel comfortable to go ahead and use them for canning. And I think also it was Lisa on Sutton's Days who mentioned that somewhere there had started some rumor that you can't use the reusable lids for canning meat. That's not true. I like that Harvest Guard gives you this little card of instructions of, step by step what to do, including most of the stuff that I just discussed, more kind of tips and hints and troubleshooting. The one thing it does mention, now I thought this was interesting, these can go in the dishwasher. It says, clean them. Your jars, lids, and rings should be washed with soap and water. They're dishwasher safe. But again, like I said, sterilize lids and rubber rings by simmering in hot water immediately prior to use. So that is a little bit of a change. If you haven't been doing that with your metal lids, you do need to do that with these. I told you about putting the things on loosely. I told you after they come out of the canner, let them cool 5 to 10 minutes. That's when you're going to tighten your bands, and you're going to be careful because those jars are going to be really hot. Put a towel over them, which again I think is just to slow down the cooling process so there's no sort of shock. Once they're room temperature, you remove the bands and you make sure your seals are good. I know I'm kind of going over. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. To remove the lids. Now this is something that's a little different because we don't usually I know I use a plastic jar opener for opening my regular jars just because I don't want to chip my actual jar. It's not that I'm worried about damaging the metal lid because I'm not going to really use that again, but I don't want to accidentally chip the rim of my jar. So I use a plastic opener for that. This is saying to remove the lid, carefully pry underside of lid with a dull object such as a table knife. Use caution not to cut the rubber gasket. And then it warns you, it says thoroughly wash rubber rings and lids, rinse and dry to store for future use. Both are dishwasher safe. Never reuse any rubber gasket that appears damaged or has lost its original shape. That makes sense. It's not going to seal properly if it's not the right shape. Getting back to what it says. Never clean lids with bleach or other oxidizing agents or strong acids. Use standard mason jar metal bands. Never tighten metal bands on jars with lids that appear convex or domed. That's indicative of trapped pressure. I kind of went over that. Let them cool 12 to 24 hours to room temperature before removing the bands. During the cooling period, I think this is kind of common sense. I mean, we all know you don't want to shock your jars regardless of what kind of lids you're using. You don't want to shock your jars from hot to cold or cold to hot. It's just saying don't put them right under your air conditioner, essentially. Now, in case you're interested, it says Harvest Guard reusable canning lids are safe for pressure canning, water bath, steam canning, and fermenting. BPA free, phthalate free. I know I said that wrong. Just one of those things that looks like it has too many consonants in a row. Phthalate free. They're suitable for all home food preservation applications and foods, including acid foods such as pickles and tomato products, FDA and USDA approved materials, recommended safe for pressure canning, water bath, steam canning, or fermenting. Here's the one thing you might find interesting. Do not use with food products, tinctures, or mixtures containing 15% or more alcohol, and do not exceed temperatures of 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are just things you want to keep in mind. Personally, I'm kind of excited between, again, I know this is small batch. I'm only going to be able to do a few jars at a time. But hey, for experimenting with these, I'm just going to do a few jars at a time of canning water so I can be trying this out while I'm sort of getting my learning curve of figuring out how to use these properly. I was very happy, like I said, with their customer service, that they contacted me and gave me the option to cancel my order when they realized that it wasn't going to ship in time for, you know, this year's end of gardening season, when most people, you know, if you were only canning your own harvest, they would have arrived too late. I thought it was great of them to offer you, like, hey, it's our fault, so we're offering you, if you want to cancel this order, no problem, we will give you a 100% refund. So I thought that was really nice. I actually ended up, I guess because I got 2 separate products, so I ended up with 2 of these cords, which is nice in case I mess one up. I guess you also could laminate them so that if you're using it in the kitchen, that you can wipe it off. Like I said, my only thing is now I'm thinking maybe I should go back and order a few more of they're almost like oversized poker chips. Don't they sound like that? I'm thinking maybe I should go back and order a few more of the regular size lids. But that is it. That is my reusable lids that I've just gotten from Harvest Guard, and my new Nesco electric pressure canner / pressure cooker, which, like I said, I don't really have much intention of using it as a pressure cooker. I do have an Instant Pot, and I do have pressure cookers that you use on the stove. So I really bought this as a pressure canner. I hope you found this informative. I hope if, like me, you've never used reusable lids and you're kind of thinking about them, I hope this gives you some information. I know there are Tatler lids and there are Harvest Guard lids. Those seem to be the 2 brands that are kind of available and out there. They seem to be very similar. Certainly in terms of their use, they seem to be very similar. And to me, these were available. I bought them. I'm very happy that I did, especially being that it doesn't seem to be any end in sight in the immediate future as far as not being able to get the regular metal canning lids. And I just feel like better safe than sorry. I'd rather have these, and if it turns out I don't need them all, then hey, I have some extra, and maybe I can, if somebody else needs some, I can give them to them. But I'd rather have them just in case this shortage goes on in terms of being able to get the regular, like, metal ball lids that I'm accustomed to using. And it'll make me learn the proper way to use the the reusable lids, which up until this point I have avoided doing. So it's kind of forcing me to learn that skill, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So again, once I've actually used them, which I hope to do shortly, like I said, I'm going to start off just canning some jars of water so that I don't waste food, and also you don't have to process jars of water. I would treat it like jars of broth. I mean, I'll probably process them for like 15 or 20 minutes just to give it a chance to give a good seal, and then make sure that my technique was good and see if I get a good seal. Once I do that, and if I can figure out why my iPhone, I went to the trouble of getting like a tripod and everything so that I could do better videos in my kitchen, because I didn't have a tripod that was working in my kitchen. So I got one, and I wanted to be able to do better videos in my kitchen as far as canning or cooking. So hopefully I'll be able to set that up if I can figure out why YouTube all of a sudden doesn't want to let me upload things from my iPhone. Very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. Again, hopefully I'll upload this video successfully without it taking 4 tries and many hours of my life. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I always appreciate you taking the time to watch, I always appreciate you sharing my videos with other people who you think might enjoy them. So thank you for doing that. Have a great day, and I hope you found this informative, especially if, like me, you've been a chicken about buying these. We need to be bold. We need to step outside our comfort zones. So here's me outside my comfort zone, and hopefully I'll be back in it once I've given them a try and gotten over that learning curve and I feel comfortable using them. Have a great day. Happy canning, happy cooking, happy preserving, dehydrating, whatever you're doing this time of year. Again, like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know if you've been using Harvest Guard lids and how they're working for you. Or if you have any special tips that maybe you can pass on that weren't necessarily mentioned in the instructions that came with them. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day, and once again, thank you for watching.